Today's learning is dedicated Ilay Nishmas, Abil Habas, Devorah Abraham. It also tonight happens to be my grandfather's yahrzeit, Abraham ben Yitzchak, and his neshama should have an aliyah. It's my mother's father's yahrzeit is tonight, the 4th of Shvat. It's also the Baba Sali's yahrzeit.
It's also the Shasav's yahrzeit. It's also the Ram Kalash's yahrzeit.
He's got a pretty good father.
That's also my grandfather's yahrzeit.
It's yours, your grandfather. Shimon David ben Moshe. Okay, we're up to chapter 11, just a moment really for review, and then we move forward. Hopefully everybody downloaded from the WhatsApp this chart. I think it will just make your life much simpler. You should have downloaded it from the WhatsApp.
Well, I'm coming in person. I don't need to download it.
Yeah, sure. You have to bring your own supplies. Everybody downloaded his. Here we go. So we are using the model of the Moda'ani as an opportunity to understand the parallel levels of understanding, and then how Hasidus is going to give us a unique interpretation, and then we're going to plug the Hasidus interpretation into the other interpretations and see how it brings out a vibrancy and a new vigor and meaning and insight and depth. And this will be the example of how Hasidus brings life to everything in Torah study. So we're up to chapter 11. This explanation that we've talked about before in the four different, I'm calling them parallel paths. Again, they're different perspectives. They're not just, everybody's got their Devar Torah and their insight, but here it's coming from a totally different perspective, legalistic, so Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, and Chai of Torah. So again, as we explained, these four parallel the four different levels of our Neshama, which are the different levels of our awareness of Hashem. Nefesh means I exist. If I exist, there must be an existence maker. Chai means Ruach is spirit, which even animals have, emotion or character. Chai is Neshama is intellect, which is distinctive to human beings, and Chai, that which I live for. These explain specific things about the Moda'ani. So just a very quick review. If you have your chart, the shot is thank you Hashem that I'm alive. It alludes to the idea of the coming to life of the dead. It also is a reference, again, a little bit allegorical, to the idea that Hashem returns my neshama to me, even if I don't deserve it. Because yesterday, when I brought it back, it had a couple of scratches on it. It wasn't maybe perfect, and yet Hashem still entrusts it with me once again. Similarly, if somebody borrows money from me, and the only thing he has to give for collateral is his pajamas, I am mandated to be compassionate and return that to him, even though that doesn't make good business sense. We also said that it is dispatched from the characteristics called Yesod associated with Malchus, which at this point may just sound like some mysterious terms, not unlike many mechanical explanations of how the phone works, and the engineer can describe it, but we'll take it for what it is. Now we're going to Chassidus comes and gives us the Yechidah Shabbat. So again, this isn't just like everybody's got a Devar Torah. This is what keeps rabbis employed. They open up the Chumash, discuss this way of saying it. It's not just another way, another perspective. It is coming from a whole different objective, and that is called this quality of Yechidah. We are attempting to find the unifying principle. Perhaps an analogy, just like a single hair from your head contains the entirety of your identity. A single fingernail contains the entirety of your identity. If I truly understood you, even the mildest illustration of your identity, I would understand everything about you. Perhaps, again, this is like a Rebbe. He meets a person for a moment and he tells him what his name is. He tells him he didn't read his history. He doesn't know his dossier, didn't interview him. Why? Because when you see a little bit, etzem, of the essence, if you hold on to a little bit, you hold on to it in its entirety. So that's what Hasidus comes, and it gives another explanation. Again, this is what rabbis got is Devar Torah, but Hasidus is going to give us a whole nother perspective that will explain the Yechidah. Is there going
to be a separate fifth board, or is it only influencing the other four?
Yes,
both.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Did you download the paper?
No,
So here comes Hasidus. What does Hasidus explain to us? That is, that we start off the day, the first thing when we wake up, after we realize that we overslept.
This is the first, very apropos that Ari is here as a father of 5 now.
Can I know her? Mazel tov. of Moed Ani, we say it, and this is an important factor, that we, even before we've washed our hands. We know that it's halacha, but after a person engages in anything other than, sort of outside of their standard practice, so they take a shower, they go in the washroom, they have to wash their hands ritually, not just with soap and water, before they engage in any davening. So when we first wake up in the morning, all night we've been sleeping, our hands touch parts of our body that are otherwise usually covered. So we're not eligible to say Hashem's name. And this is why we constructed the prayer or the declaration of Moed Ani, because it avoids saying Hashem's name. You will not find God's name in the Moed Ani. We just refer to Hashem as the living and ever King. Even that means we say this even with Tameh, disqualified hands. Why is that? So commonly this is thought of as, well, like I said, you're not eligible, so it's the best we can do. Chassidus comes along and inverts this completely and says, as Rebbe Ephraim says, au contraire, quite the contrary, that even if a person is tameh, it cannot touch the very essence of their identity, their moed ani. No matter how, God forbid, a person is entrenched in schmutz, spiritual or whatever it may be, their essential identity as a Jew that recognizes the essence of Hashem is untouchable. It could be that a Jew is imperfect in one way or another, but his moed ani, his essential awareness of his commitment to Hashem, is untouchable. And this is because he has a characteristic about him that is essentially his identity. All the other levels, nefesh, which is essentially what I do, ruach, which is essentially how I feel, I love Hashem, I love other people, I don't love Hashem, neshama, my intellect, that I engage, chaya, that I live for godliness, those could be deficient. I could do mitzvahs, I cannot do mitzvahs. I could love Hashem, I cannot love Hashem. But the yechida of my identity, the very essence of my true existence, that is absolutely unified with the very essence. There can be no deficiency, no tumah, no soiling of the very essence of my identity as a Jew. That is constant and consistent. And this is the reason why in the Moed Ani we do not mention any of the 7 names of Hashem. Not because, or just because, like we said, well, we're disqualified, so we came up with a clever workaround. Not just as a second best, but since this level of Moed Ani comes from the very essence of my identity, so it attaches to the very essence of Hashem. And every name is always going to capture some characteristic. We think about it even in our own names. When you go to your doctor, you call him Dr. X, so then you're identifying with his medical character. His children don't call him doctor, they call him father. Why? Because they're identifying with a different aspect of his existence. And if his patients would call him father, and his children would call him doctor, it would be upside down. And even the same people may have different names depending on the relationship. So every name is illustrative of a particular relationship. So the essence is truly who you are. We know this ourselves intuitively, because if you're blessed to have it, yeah.
When does that yechida get into you? In other words, let's say you're a converted Jew. Do they have the same?
I can't hear you because people are eating.
Okay.
Say it again.
I'm thinking that the yechida, it's the essence of every Jew, but is it from the birth? I'm thinking, let's say, if a friend of mine is just converted to Judaism.
That's what's happened. His neshama is like my neshama and your neshama.
It's the same once you convert.
That's correct. That's why we count him in the minyan. We don't say, well, we need 10 stars.
So it's not something you're necessarily born with as a Jew.
Well, if you're a Jew, you are.
But
you might say even a convert was born with it, but it was concealed. It was latent until we exhumed it through the process.
Oh, is that what we believe? In other words, it was always there for a true.
Correct. That's why we call him a convert who converts. But it's beyond the scope. Okay, I'm going to resume meeting.
Okay, I know. I'm sorry.
No problem.
That's why we don't watch Negev on Yom Kippur.
Well, good point. Rabbi Rappaport says, an example, we don't wash Negavasser, we don't wash our hands on Yom Kippur. Because in Yom Kippur, we're talking about the untouchable characteristic. So here, Chassidus has turned it upside down. Till now, we thought that the absence of Hashem's name in the Moed Ani is a concession. You can't because we're not eligible to. So it's a second best. But now we see, no, on the contrary, it's better that way. You can never get, they're the most half full group of people you could ever find. You can't get these Hasidim down. And that's why it doesn't use a name, because a name would highlight a particular characteristic. And we are talking to the very essence of Hashem. And therefore, only Hasidus can give this explanation. Not because Hasidus is smarter. This is a common approach. It's very important. But we study in the Talmud, and we have two different opinions, Hillel and Shammai. So we say, who's right? Meaning, we think one of them is smarter. He's better. It's not better. It's a different perspective. It's not right, wrong in that simplistic sense. So the Hasidus is giving us a different perspective that is distinct to the character of Hasidus. That the other four levels or four methods of understanding, again, it's not a competition. But since, again, they are relating to something very defined and very particular within Torah, do not approach, it's not their objective to explain the Yechida any more than it is the engineer's perspective to explain the philosophy, or the philosopher to explain the mechanics. It's not their perspective. Those others all describe something very particular. The nefesh level about function, the ruach level about the character, the neshama level, the intellect, what's called sometimes the neshama of the neshama, what we live for, our passion. But the yechida, this essential level, it's not in their genre. That's why they don't talk about it. But in Hasidus came along and made this something that we could discuss, something that can be detailed, something that can be fleshed out, something that can be made known to us. And since the Yechida is, again, in essence, remember, this is the distinctive quality of Hasidus. It's not just another explanation, but it's an explanation that now charges, electrifies, enlivens all the other explanations, as we will play it out. So we take the Hasidus and we turn it around, and if you have your charts out, everybody, we will now plug it in to the other levels of understanding, and we will see how they come alive in a whole new meaning. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to walk it through. So here we go, chapter 12. Remember the pshat. The pshat means the stripped down basic idea. The basic idea of my da'ani is, thank you, Hashem, for giving me my life. The greatest gift is to be alive. And when the morning, when it's the most evident that we've gone from sleep to alertness, which, every moment we could consider the concept of Maida'ani, but now we're considering it in the most obvious. Thank you, Hashem, that I'm alive. That's the basic interpretation. The emphasis there is that Hashem has given me my soul. That means that my response is that I have a Jewish soul. If Hashem would return me somebody else's soul, I wouldn't be so happy. Again, if I woke up and I was a tree, I wouldn't be so happy. Why? You think trees are unhappy? No, trees are perfectly happy because they're trees. But we're not trees. And if I treat an animal like a tree, or I treat a person like an animal, I'm doing something cruel. Why is it cruel? That's how I treat my dog, because that's how you treat a dog. It's not how you treat a human being. If I came back and I woke up and I wasn't myself and I didn't know who I was, and when we can even observe this in a psychological fashion, people wake up, they have no recollection of who their identity is, etc., brain injuries, whatever. We're not here to discuss the biology. We're not so grateful. So our gratitude is not just that I am alive, which of course is a great bracha, but my gratitude is that I am alive and I'm me. And if I turn on my computer in the morning and somebody else's files are there, I'm not so happy, even though the computer is turned back on. Why? Since I have this yechida quality, so I understand, what does it mean to be alive? What do I mean when I say, thank you for being alive? What does being alive mean? Is it simply biological function? Not to diminish that. But what we understand is that being alive is worth gratitude when it is a Chayim Yehudim, a Jewish being alive, the highest of a human being, that the spirit of the person rises up above. That's what it means to be grateful for my life. What is it that I'm grateful for? I'm grateful for my capacity to overcome my materiality and to be aligned with something spiritual. Simply to be physically alive, like an animal, or again, which also has function, it even has emotion, it can be aggressive or playful or happy or sad, but an animal looks below it. You think about a cow is looking what's in front of it, and a human being has the capacity to look at what's above it. So the distinctive characteristic of a human being is to be able to look above, be able to see the infinity that's expanded above me, in contrast to an animal that only looks below me. Next Shabbos, okay. Comparably, that's not a life. If a human being lives like an animal, that's not a life. And there's no gratitude for that. Even though physical existence is, of course, very important. We believe that there is a great value in being alive. And still, every Jew, it has got this royal character. And the idea of being alive is that we are associated with our father, the king. And if you'll give him a life, but you will detach him from the king, and you will bring him to live in a barn like an animal, not only will it not be pleasurable, but it will be repulsive and disgusting. So again, a core point is that we believe that our spiritual life is more important than our physical life. Hopefully we never have to make that separation. And we have great reverence for physical life. But if, God forbid, they say, bow to the idol or we'll kill you, that is, surrender your spiritual life or surrender your physical life, may we never be tested. We not only believe that we believe every Jew intuitively would surrender their physical life to preserve their spiritual life. And this may happen for people who have real jobs who aren't rabbis, when they say, well, you have to come to work this Saturday. I'll never make you come to, but this Saturday you must come to work or we're going to fire you. I mean, that's a real decision. What's more important? That I have a job, but I'll go broke. I'll live in a box in Lower Wacker. I mean, I don't mean to be flip about it. Again, I have to work on Saturday, but people who have real jobs have this is a real challenge for them. It's sincere. Rabbis lecture about it, but it doesn't affect them. There's a story of a famous chassid. His name was Rabbi Kusil Lepler, and the Alter Rebbe, wanted to give him a bracha, and his bracha was that he should have a long life. And he said, "Oh, not so fast. I only want that bracha if they're not peasants' years. Nothing against peasants. What is a peasant? They have eyes, but they don't see. They have ears, they don't hear. They don't see godliness. They don't hear godliness. I don't want that life." Now, everybody's mother taught them, if someone offers you a gift, you can say thank you or no thank you. You don't start saying, well, I only want it this way or that. So why is it that when the Alter Rebbe wants to give him such a significant bracha, he starts putting all kinds of conditions? He only wants it. He doesn't just want a car. He wants a Lexus. That since living a long time is itself a great bracha, like we said, why is he, Rabbi Kusil Lipler, putting all these conditions on it? It seems rude. But now we understand. Because what he was saying is, that's what life means. Meaning, it's not just that I want the bracha, but I want it to be a better bracha. It's no bracha otherwise. There's an old saying, I can't afford all the things I get for free. So if somebody gives you something that's broken down, it's not a gift. So this Rabbi Kusil Lepler is saying that even though long life is wonderful, but to him, what he's saying is long life is only valuable if it's a life where I see and hear godliness. Otherwise, that's not a life. And that's why he said, but not a peasant's life. Because the life that doesn't include godliness is not considered to be significant to me. On the contrary, it would be repulsive. And this sense is only when we have the awareness of the Yechida level. Because again, just the Pshat level is, thank you for being alive. It's Chassidus that comes along and says, well, what do we mean life? Life means to be connected with Hashem. That's what life is. It's a high level to be able to achieve that, to be aware of it. And Chassidus gives us that insight. That since we are a compound of individual aspects, our intellect, our character, they all seem to exist for themselves. And Hashem is, oh yeah, that too. And therefore, there is seemingly a value to a life of all kinds of other human capacities, even if it doesn't include godliness. Okay, it's not the best life, but it's still a life. If I had a life of intellectual meaning and I had a life of emotional comfort and I had a life of material comforts and I didn't have godliness, it's okay, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. No. So Chassidus comes along and shows us life without Hashem is not life. It's not just a life that's deficient. It's not life. And that only comes from the quality of Yechida, that we understand that life is only about having a relationship with Hashem, and all those other things are not, well, it's pretty good, okay, it's not perfect. Where nobody who's studying this essay is denying that there is a value to having God in your life. The question is whether there's some value, okay, it's not 100, but it's 70 without God. No, the answer is without God, there's nothing. So here again, we see that Chassidus has not added something. We're in chapter 13 to the Pshat. It's not just giving you, another witticism, another clever way of saying it. I'm not diminishing that approach. That's important as well. Rather, what Chassidus is doing is it's coming and giving clarity to the Pshat itself. Like, remember, we used the analogy of the venture capitalist. When the venture capitalist comes to the small manufacturer, to like the venture, like an adventure, he's a guy, he has a lot of wealth. So he's looking to invest in something that has great capacity, but it doesn't have the capital to produce its product. So a classic example.
He's got a venture credit card.
So, like Kraft Foods, as a very simple illustration, Kraft Foods is always looking for new foods, but they've invented mayonnaise and Twinkies already. So what do? They look for some small niche product, like, hummus, it's not yet mamash, and they come to this little manufacturer and they say, you have a great product. Why don't you produce this by the 100,000 and sell it all over the world? Because I don't have the capital to build the factories, to do the distribution. I don't have the capital. So Kraft says, we have the capital, and therefore we will buy your business, or we'll invest in your business, and we will develop it. Meaning, they're not coming here to ruin your business. They like your business. They're not coming here to say you're making it wrong and don't make hummus, make Twinkies. They're telling you, we are going to invest to make your business better than you could make it on your own. Well, in a sense, that's what Chassidus does. It comes and adds a clarity to the concept that the concept itself would never recognize without the investment of this gift. So this is what it means, that we help the person develop their potential. Not that we come and tell them, okay, you're doing it wrong, do what I say. The Rebbe creates leaders, not followers. That whole genre of ideas is all contained within this sort of attitude, I guess.
Is this descriptive or prescriptive? Because I would say halachically, I know that very often when we're dealing with people that might be in a state that is compromised, whether, especially when they get into their older years and they might have dementia, and a lot of people might argue, okay, quality of life is compromised, yet we're always like, okay, life is life, and we want the person to live as long as possible, even if they're not in the state that they were 20 years before. Is this descriptive of that there still might be, or there still always is some kind of God awareness?
Right, that's why it's valuable.
Or is this prescriptive that we should always strive to accomplish a God awareness?
Well, it's descriptive in that it's always there. So this is their example. I mean, if we think that life is about playing tennis, so once you can't play tennis anymore, you might as well pull the plug. Whatever the way people say, well, no one would ever want to live that way. Well, no 5-year-old would ever want to live like a 55-year-old. So what are we going to do? Actually, going to be 55-year-old? Because when you're 5, you would think that if you can't play kickball and eat Cocoa Puffs every day, what's the point of life? So we look at the guy who's 97, God forbid, whatever, limited. So, well, he doesn't want to live. How do you know he doesn't want to live? Because you wouldn't want to live like that. Well, when you were 5, you wouldn't want to live like when you were 35. Mortgages and all kinds of other nonsense that you have to worry about. 5 kids.
But that 97-year-old might have some kind of God awareness. We might not be able to define it,
and we have that awareness. That's why
locate it necessarily.
That's why his life is as valuable as the 5-year-old's. Meaning, if we're going to have some sort of rigid scale and say, well, who has more fun, or who's got greater capacity, or who's going to have a more intellectual, then we start charting it out. And we say, well, who's got more of a neshama? And that's the classic halacha. If they come to the town and say, give us a random person or we'll kill everybody. We're not giving him anybody. Well, who's to say? Right? If they say, we'll kill that guy, or we'll kill you. Oh, but the guy's 104. Because if we're going to chart it out based on rigid statistics, certainly the guy who's 10 has got a quote better quality of life than the guy who's 110. But if we're going to chart it out on the godliness, then there's no way that we can make any distinction.
And it's not measurable.
Correct, because it's infinite.
But in halacha, both of them are true. Because in halacha, you have that, and then you also have the idea of chalal of Shabbos Achas Kadesh Yishma Shabbos Harbi, that there's sort of this return on investment.
Right, but the reason why we're
we'd
Machal Shabbos.
even say that about a person that.
So that's the question. Because
Right,
the
that-
Gemara says there's a whole mitzvah about this. There's the Gemara says two reasons. Two in the Mudim. How do you know that you're Machal Shabbos for a thing? One is because Chalal of Shabbos Shabbos Harbe, and the other one is because of Chai B'hem. So the question is, one, like if somebody is going to die for sure within 48 hours, he's not going to live to next Shabbos. So as far as the first answer is concerned, that answer doesn't apply, but the second answer of the Chai B'hem applies.
Right.
And there's halachic ramifications to, I don't remember now, but there are scenarios where one applies and one doesn't, and there's halachic ramifications to that. So I think that this mimer is talking to the second point where you have, where there's sort of this unquantifiable quality of life, specifically a life as a yid with a neshama, and then that trickles down, hopefully, into an awareness and into a living such a life that Chalal of Shabbos Achas Kadesh Yishma Shabbos Harbe.
Right, and I'm saying that what I feel like is being said is that even if a person is not necessarily able to put on tefillin, is not able to keep Shabbos, is not able, when it comes to mitzvahs, this person is definitely compromised, just like he's compromised in the more materialistic aspects of life.
Right.
Yet there is some level of awareness, of God awareness, that is not necessarily conscious, but it's still there,
Right.
and that makes that person's life valuable every second.
I don't know if it's
Even if you can't play
possible.
tennis.
I don't know how possible it is for a
Runs
not chassid to shed light on a mimer, but there's a famous Reb Kiva Eger. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about David Bleich, but there's a famous Reb Kiva Eger where he says that how could a husband make kiddush for his wife? The husband's already davened in shul, so he's already been yotz, so the mitzvah there is it's only the rabbanon. And his wife, if she didn't have wife, so it's only a mitzvah rabbanon. So he says no. When he comes in the house and she says to him, "Good Shabbos," that saying "Good Shabbos" is the mitzvah deraisa. So David Bleich writes this whole thing that there was this old woman who was 90, 100, whatever, however old, and it was a whole fight with the doctors to, what's it called, extubate, and whatever. And then he walked into her room in the hospital on Friday night, and he said "Good Shabbos," and she mumbled "Good Shabbos" back to him, and he says, "There you go. Just that mumbling is worth infinite."
She was a guy
Okay, so what Chassidus does for this straight up interpretation is it doesn't add something. What it does is it brings new life and new meaning into what was there already. That's my venture capital analogy. It's not there to change the chumash. It's there to bring out an expansion of the chumash maker that he could never do on his own because he doesn't have the investment capital. The same thing is going to be true with the next stage, which is called the remez. You have your charts. The remez is that just like we wake up, we go to bed dead tired, and we wake up refreshed, so too, a fundamental tenet of our faith, the 13th of the 13 principles, is the coming to life of the dead. So,
Wait, was the pshat, your hands are not clean, so you can't say Hashem's name, or was
Yes.
the pshat, I'm happy to be alive? Which
both.
one?
But you could only give the sort of halfway, sort of backhanded.
Because in your
Gratitude.
chart, I think it's just about the hands, our tummy, and so on. Is pshat.
Acknowledgement, absence of Hashem's name, just came due to spiritual ineligibility. Acknowledgement, absence of Hashem's name, acknowledgement.
So it's like kind of hand in hand.
Hand in hand, good pun. Okay.
Okay, so that's the pshat so far is what you said.
The remez,
The Yechida brought to that pshat was that you're inseparable from Hashem.
and that's why even if you got dirty hands,
And even the essence, because you're not saying Hashem's name, it's more of an essence of Hashem.
correct. Yes.
Okay, sorry.
What is the remez? The remez is to the coming to life of the dead. But this, on the surface, it's like, okay, it looks like that, but it's not that. I mean, the difference between a person who's asleep waking up and the person who's dead, which halacha recognizes the idea of death coming to life, it's an enormous illusion with an A, not I, to say, or it's a distant, what's that? Because death is only called 1/60th. I'm sorry, sleep is only called 1/60th of death. So it's at least 60 times further away. And again, what's the whole chiddush? What's the whole change? That when a person goes to sleep, he has his functional body, because the person's body is still biologically functioning, he's breathing, brain activity, whatever. And his soul is sort of dispatched up to Shemayim. And when he wakes up, they get reunited. They're both there, but they just were separated. Whereas with Chias Amesim, the coming to life of the dead, then you have a body that is decomposed, that ceased to live, a soul that has returned into the essence of Hashem. And there's only this loose bone, this little tiny bone. And now the whole neshama has to be, quote, rebuilt. The whole body has to be rebuilt. And then they have to be matched up to each other. This is a far more radical transformation, that we're going to rebuild the whole body. Hashem will rebuild the whole body off this one bone. And the neshama that has gone through all kinds of changes that it's gone through after it passes away in levels and levels is going to have to be rebuilt. And you're going to have to put them back together. So this isn't just like a couple who maybe had a disagreement, but they always acknowledged that they were still married and now they made up. But this is like a couple that completely dissolved their relationship and now they have to recreate their whole identity and recreate their whole relationship. So come on, it's to say that when they wake up in the morning, it's comparable to when a person's body will come back to life seems, again, pretty remote. It seems like a pretty remote idea. Okay, so now comes Chassidus. And again, what's Chassidus going to do? It's not going to say, well, that's wrong. It's going to say, let me give you a different perspective. And now, again, the remez will come to light and life anew. That when the neshama is returned, it's not just regarding the neshama being attached to the body, but the body and the soul themselves. Every morning we become a whole new creation, meaning we have a tendency to think, I exist, the soul exists, and that's going on. And they get separated, come back together. But what we have to remember is the innate state of existence is non-existence. In the beginning, there was nothing. And in the beginning of creation, Hashem created heaven and earth. The creation is not the natural state of being. The natural state of being is only Hashem. And Hashem is creator. He didn't just create the world a long time ago. Hashem is constantly creating the world. Whoop, there it was again. Hashem is constantly creating the world. Now, it doesn't say this here in the Mimer, but a way to visualize this is to visualize. Meaning, if I imagine something in my mind, you just pause for a moment and imagine something in your mind, it's there. You stop imagining, it's gone. How come it's not still there? Because it's only there because I am nourishing its existence through my conscious awareness of it. And that's how all of creation is. My body doesn't have innate existence. I mean, look what we have learned over the last almost 2 years now. Who would have believed that the New York Times, General Motors, and Northbrook Court would not rule the world forever? Who would have believed that? This is forever. You know, there's an old saying, there's nothing as whole as a heart that's broken open. And now we say there's no building as permanent as the sukkah. Who would have bet on the sukkah or the World Trade Center? You would have bet on the World Trade Center. That'll be forever. It's not. So we have learned about what we think is forever. You know, technology is giving us another insight. You know, all we need is for the internet to go out for a moment. We become apoplectic if it's gone for a moment. Well, this is the idea that Hashem is continuously sustaining all of creation. Really, at every moment, it is a complete recreation. So, in an odd sense,
but the loose bone is not. It's something from something, not something from nothing. From the loose bone, when you get reincarnated.
But even the loose bone, I guess, is being sustained at every moment.
Okay, but I'm saying, but the remez is to that's amazing. So, and when you revivify after you die, you are not created something from nothing. You're being something from something.
Something out of something, right? Which is even closer to the waking up in the morning. Because I have my body, I have my soul.
But ultimately, you're getting that existence again from something.
From the essence of Hashem.
From the essence of something that does not. I'm trying to use the word right now. It's not something, but the essence of Hashem that doesn't need to become actualized.
Hashem is the true something. We say that God created the world, something from nothing, but really it's kind of upside down. We're not something, we're nothing. And Hashem is something. Our existence is dependent on Hashem, like that thought bubble. Hashem turns his attention away from us, our existence ceases to be. So we are not truly a thing. We do not have true, by which I mean sustainable existence. Our existence is continuously dependent on Hashem. Now, this is true in every moment. Why then are we particularly linking it to when we wake up in the morning? Because then it's a little more obvious. As we go through the day, it's a little less obvious. But again, I don't mean to be silly with technology. When you start your computer up in the morning, it works, and hopefully it just keeps working. Every once in a while, it does crash, but if it doesn't start up in the morning, the sort of when you start the car on a cold day, there's that chiddush, that innovation, that's something new. So too, we wake up in the morning, but truthfully, it's at every moment. At every moment, Hashem is giving us absolute sustained existence. No different than the creation of, or the recreation of the person in the time of the coming to life of the dead. Now, again, this is only made available to us with the study of Chasidus. All the other four forms, since they themselves are within certain parameters. Come on, Rabbi, this is the real world. That rock is forever. There are certain presumptions. Chasidus teaches us, Hashem, there's no presumption. Why do we presume that tomorrow the sun is going to rise in the east and set in the west? Well, maybe not. That 2 + 2 is going to be 4 tomorrow. Maybe not. The Gemara talks about under what circumstances can a person say Hallel. Maybe a person wants to say Hallel every day. He wakes up. It's worth considering. Why do we assume that tomorrow the world is going to look like it does today? Look how much it doesn't, in our lifetime, 9/11, Corona, and so on. We do, but that's only, they say nature is a miracle you've gotten used to. But it's not innately that way. It doesn't have to. Hashem does whatever he wants. Tomorrow he'll decide that the sun's going to rise in the west and set in the east. He'll do it. We're learning in the parshas when Hashem brought Makas Cheshech, the plague of darkness, maybe it'll be forever. Maybe that's it. Maybe now this is the way it's going to be. That's it. The sun is dead and life is over as we knew. It could be. Hashem could do whatever he wants, right? So all those other 4 levels, those will be going to say, well, what do you mean? I can't imagine the world without the world. I can't imagine that I don't exist, right? Because those live in presumed platforms, the levels of awareness that are described as the 4 worlds, the 4 stages of awareness, overwhelming awareness of Hashem to lesser and lesser levels of awareness. But even the most aware level, called Atzilus, where I am next to Hashem, still presupposes I am next to Hashem. There's still a me. Can I imagine existence without myself? I really can't. Chassidus comes along and says, well, why do you presume your own existence? People say, do you believe in God? Well, hold on. How do I know I exist? That's just to illustrate the point. The 5th Rebbe was asked, how do we know that we exist? And he said, because Torah validates our existence. And the illustration he used is that if a person chops wood on Shabbos, they have violated Torah. But if a person pantomimes chopping wood, he hasn't violated Torah. Meaning Torah, pantomimes, he pretends, he does like an actor.
It's the first time I learned that word.
Pantomime?
It's where mind comes.
Yeah, mind. Yes.
Just saying
myself, this Jewish boy. So
This
the concept
violating the rules over here of no fancy words.
pantomime is a fancy word.
Not to mention apoplectic.
Okay.
2 strikes.
So the concept being that only Hasidus is willing to introduce the presumption that God exists. Do I exist? Meaning we say, do you believe in God? Well, hold on. Do you believe that you exist? Yeah, why? And then people say, well, look, I can touch myself. Why do I presume that I exist? Anything you're going to say presupposes my own existence, the ultimate tautology. Well, I'll explain it to you. When you explain to me that I exist, what if I don't exist? Am I willing to consider that I don't exist? This is summarized in a line that Hasidus often quotes, where our objective is to get to the point that God is presumed and creation is contemplated. We live it the other way. We say, well, I exist. I'm here, the table's here, you, this guy, that guy. What about God? Yeah, I don't know. Prove to me that God exists, this type of thing. Hasidus takes it completely the opposite. It's only from that perspective that we can presume or even venture to discuss that the worlds don't exist, the physical world doesn't exist, except by the whim of Hashem that he gives it existence, that we can have this concept that at every moment, creation should be as stunning as the dead coming to life.
So what was the point? If I pantomime
Chopping
doing-
wood,
doing
I
something, doing
haven't
malacha?
impacted the world. I haven't impacted Torah. What we know is that Torah exists. Hashem exists, Torah exists, and Torah says that you exist. Because if you just do this, you haven't done anything. But if you take an axe and you chop wood, Torah says you have done something.
The point being that when you live out something that's in the Torah and the world, that's when it has some kind of.
Your existence is validated by Torah. This is that idea, like serving your country because you want to attach yourself to something you know your country exists because it predates you and it will outlive you. The king, so if I can do something for the king, I guess I exist because the king for sure exists. So Hasidus turns it upside down.
Where is the basis for 1/60th? I mean, I know like in
It's a Talmudic statement. That's a Talmudic statement, whether it's meant to be literal or it's meant to be some description.
There's more, there's many 60s.
Yeah, there's many things in that.
I mean, I keep seeing it like when you drop liquid in the soup and stuff. But once
Say again?
I see it like in kashrut, you drop a little milk falls into the pot of meat.
Right, it's a similar idea, very similar idea.
Yeah.
Very similar idea. So what is the Hasidus that it brings into the Medrash? So remember, the Medrash is that we have a halach, it's actually in the Chumash, it happens to be my Bar Mitzvah Parsha, that if a person lends somebody money, he is absolutely entitled to collect that debt. And remember, loans have to be interest-free. So why would somebody ever want to loan somebody money? The only reason would possibly be out of a mitzvah. So we want the people to do a mitzvah, and we want the guy to get his money back. You want to give tzedakah, that's fine. But lending money is not the same as tzedakah. So how do we help the guy get his money back? So one way that creditors can be assured of getting their money back is to take collateral. That's one way. So what's the role of collateral? That since the debtor wants his item back, he's going to be incentivized to pay up. So the Torah uses, it's in the Torah, that the guy is so poor that he has nothing. The only thing he has is his night clothes, his pajamas. So he says to the creditor, here, hold my pajamas. So at night, he wants to go to sleep. He's humiliated by his poverty. He doesn't have his pajamas. So the creditor is required to return the pajamas to him. This makes no sense. The whole point of collateral is to compel a legitimate debtor to pay his debt. So why are we mandating compassion? So we said that this is similar to Hashem. He turns our neshama to us. Maybe my neshama, I brought it back yesterday with some scratches on it. Why should he want to give it to me? I didn't do exactly what he told me. Hashem dispatches our neshama and he says, be righteous and don't be wicked. And he tells you to do mitzvahs and you didn't do it. So why should he give it back to you? If you lend someone your car, they brought it back with a scratch, I may not be so anxious to let him. I might not be so anxious to lend him my car again. So we say, look, just like Hashem offered you kindness, somebody gave you a chance. Somebody befriended you when you didn't have any friends. Somebody invited you when you didn't have. Somebody gave you your first job. So Hashem shows us unwarranted kindness. We should show others unwarranted kindness. That's the message. So here Chassidus comes and gives us a new depth to understanding. And again, it doesn't say, well, that's wrong. Let me tell you what the right answer is. The drush. This is the D of Pardes, correct. The prohibition to withhold the person's collateral without Chassidus, again, it doesn't seem to make any sense. He owes him the money and he has no way to get it paid back. So when he has the opportunity to get paid back, He should use it. And again, Torah in general is very much on the side of creditors, because otherwise, if we make it difficult for creditors to collect their loans, it doesn't hurt the creditors, it hurts the debtors. Because the next guy wants to borrow money because I had a bad experience. I'm not lending money anymore. I mean, he has no incentive to lend money because he can't charge interest. So why would he lend money? Because it's a mitzvah. So fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. So if I lend Chaim $10 and he doesn't pay me back, and the court system doesn't support him paying me back, when Beryl asked me to lend him $10, I'm saying no, I'm not doing it. So lenders who are people who have resources are not hurt by this. Potential secondary or next guy debtor is the guy who's hurt by it because he can't find anyone to lend the money because the guy's been cheated. So why aren't we giving the guy, the creditor, his opportunity to collect his debt? What's the difference what it is? It just like if someone stole something from me. If someone stole something from me, the court system will protect my property rights. The guy who stole it from me, he needs it more than you do. That's not your business. But you have $100 million and he doesn't have any. Too bad. We don't let thieves off because he needed it. We enforce the law. Even to the point of allowing a victim to do clever workarounds to get his stolen property back. So why are we not protecting the ownership of the creditor? So Chassidus comes along and says, well, hold on. Let's remember here what we're talking about are mitzvahs. And what is the reason why we do mitzvahs? That's a trick question. The reason why we do mitzvahs is for one reason and one reason only. Why do we eat matzah on Pesach? Because God asked us to. Why do we put on tefillin? Because God asked us to. Why do we return lost items, pay our employees on time? Because it's the will of God. Now you can talk about, well, matzah reminds us that we left Egypt, and tefillin reminds us of our commitment, the head and heart, and we return lost items, and people return lost items to us. But once you start getting into reasons, and I got a counter reason, I got a better reason. And what if it doesn't apply in this circumstance? It doesn't apply in that circumstance. So ultimately, what we always want to remember is we do mitzvahs because it is the will of Hashem. Because even when we have an explanation, don't let the explanation get in the way. We do mitzvahs because it's God's will. And therefore, even those mitzvahs that are rational, we fulfill them with the same devotion as those mitzvahs which are, quote, super rational. So why is it that you're allowed to wear wool and you're allowed to wear linen, but you can't wear a garment that has wool and linen sewn together? Because God said so. Why don't you murder? Because God said so. That's all. But murder will destroy societies, not this time. But if you murder people, then you'll get murdered. Not me, I'm protected. I'll get away with it. If no one will know. I always have a good excuse. If there's a reason, there's always a counter reason. This, parenthetically, I believe, is part of the Rebbe's strategy to, generally speaking, with some exception, not to engage in debates. It used to be popular. We're going to have a debate about God, the presence of God, but not debate. First of all, you never win a debate, because when you win the debate, you lose friends. Because other people wind up humiliated. They don't change anyone's mind. The guy just thinks you're either dishonest or stupid. I mean, you know I'm right, but you're just pretending that you don't because you're unethical or you're too stupid to know that I'm right. You just wind up with bitter feelings and so on. And the broader point is you're conceding that it's debatable. Let's debate whether or not the Holocaust happened. You've lost already because you've conceded that it's debatable. Let's debate whether or not your children should stay with you. Maybe you should trade your children in for other children. So come on, say, good news, kid. I had a debate and I won. So you get to stay here. Is that good or bad? What, tomorrow, a guy come up, I used to say about wife. Then the guy said, well, how pretty is the other one?
And also, when it comes to debating, I mean, if you have a person that's amazing at it, and it's not,
Christopher Hitch is the best, man.
and it's not
And he
telling
has
the
an
truth,
English accent. He could sell ice to the Eskimos
well, first of all, you get like 20 extra key points if you have an English
if you have an
accent.
English accent.
It's-
Right.
it's
And you're
just not
witty
there.
and you smoke a pipe and you have patches on the elbows, forget it. Game over.
Right, so you could be on the wrong side of argument and just win in a
Because you're so pretty.
Right.
Sure. You got to have a bracelet and poofy hair. That's it. A nice tan, you win.
Don't you ever
So
made
familiar.
Chassidus
The
grow
rabbi with the
through-
poofy hair, the bracelet.
Those were honest people that he was debating with. They weren't people with poofy hair and bracelets. And again, I'm not saying never, Manuel Shachat did. Because at some point you feel like, well, an idiot. Why you don't want to debate me? Why? Because I'll win, right? Because you know that I'm right. At some point you don't want to feel like an idiot. It's like, don't fight. So the guy, punches you, then you beat the living lights out of it. All right. So those mitzvahs that have a reason. So what has Hashem done? Wouldn't it be better, so to speak? Wouldn't it be easier? I should say better. Wouldn't it be easier if all mitzvahs were completely irrational? You wouldn't have to mix in. You check your rationale at the door of the shul or the yeshiva or your home, and everything was only about.
Well, I know people that doesn't look pretty.
It would be a lot easier. You'd never have to get confused. The fulfillment has to be also exclusively because of the will of Hashem combined with the logic. You have to have both. That's why we sit and debate and 10 times over. And then these two guys who are yelling at each other go out to lunch. How come Hill and Shammai still like each other? You'd think these guys, they must hate each other. Hatfields and McCoys. No, why? Because they know that it's ultimately the will of Hashem. And since every mitzvah is the will of Hashem, and Hashem truly wants what he wants, meaning he's not just making stuff up to give us busy work. So Hashem doesn't change. And Hashem is not exchangeable for something else. He doesn't run out and say, oh, okay, now that so this is the classic thing. Like Rabbi Shimon says, we treat God like he's senile. We talk about him when he's in the room. He tells us what he means is you don't have to have, he says to keep kosher. That's not what he means. What he means is you should watch what you eat, so we should be vegan. God says keep Shabbos. That's not what he means. He means you should rest, you shouldn't work so hard. God's like, I'm right here. You don't have to talk about me, and I'm not senile. What I say, keep Shabbos. That's what I mean. No, he doesn't. Let us see. Go sit in the corner. Because every mitzvah is the will of Hashem. It's not for some other purpose that we can then say, well, you keep kosher, I'm vegan. You keep Shabbos, I garden on Saturday. And we're doing the same thing. I'm relaxing, you're relaxing. How is this relevant now to the obligation to return the collateral at night? Because the goal of the mitzvah is not just for the benefit of the creditor, that we want to protect him, but it is that Hashem's will. And therefore, even when the guy is owed money and the debtor doesn't repay his debt, we don't just get to say that, therefore, I get to do whatever I want. And I consider that if he did this, you don't get to make this decision. And as a wise man who's sitting in this room once said to me, when it comes to the laws of kosher mishpat, the laws of legalities, your intuition is always wrong. Just take that as a general rule. You think, well, I think that if somebody did that, they deserve to. Who cares what you think? It's not. We didn't ask you to think. We asked you to follow the rules. The truth, awareness of this only comes when we have the Chasidus. Everything else is that Hashem is the genius. He's so smart. He gave us the best ideas. And then it's manifest in some way. And Hashem has come with the best business plan, the best societal plan, the best government, the best family. It's only the Yechida, this quality of Chassidus, where there is no measurement, there is no framing of it, this absolute bond with the infinity of Hashem, where we can sense the Ratzon of Hashem, the will of God, which is to return the pajamas to the guy, even though I have every reason. That is why we do what we do. Okay. Final one, which is Soid. So remember, Soid is the Kabbalistic, and we gave you this technical term that the Neshama is dispatched to us from a combination of the sphera called Soid, how it is combined with Malchus. Now, a little bit of a background. When we talk about the spheras, these are identifiable tags as to how we can understand how God operates and how God created us. So we say it every day in the davening. It's a quote from Chronicles, Divrei HaYomim. We say, to you, Hashem, there is, and we list off 7 characteristics. Hashem, Hamidullah, V'Hagivura, V'Hatiferes, V'Hanetza. 7 different characteristics. The 7th is a word that doesn't translate well in English. It is the act of kinging. Presidents preside and governors govern. If we had a word for kings doing their thing, they king, reigning, ruling, something like that. So the difference between that last one, which we repeat, L'cha Hashem, again, we say, to you, Hashem, we interrupt it, is being the king, the authority, is that authority is separate from character. Meaning, a king has to make a decision. Am I going to raise taxes? Am I going to war? Am I putting a stop sign? Some of these decisions seem on the surface
Yes.
to be very trivial and seemingly are beneath the stature of the king, but try living without stop signs. It's not going to be so good. So we perceive it here as being something very functional. The king decided to put up a stop sign. But what the king is doing is he is incorporating all of his character to come up with this decision. This is what we do. So Malchus, this quality, is the expression, it's the decision. And as we say, kindness never helped anybody. Nobody was ever helped by kindness because kindness is a concept. When kindness is combined with Malchus, people get helped because Malchus is the implementation of the quality of whichever it is, kindness, discipline, whatever one of the characteristics is manifest. So we said that the quality from whence Hashem dispatches our neshama is how Malchus is connected with Yesod. Now Yesod means foundation. We could translate it as basic connection. And always remember that the spheroids are amoral. They're not immoral, they're amoral. It's like a hammer. Is a hammer virtuous? It depends. I knock in nails, it's useful. I knock you in the head, not so nice. It's not the hammer that is virtuous or evil. The spheroid as well. Yesod in a positive sense is when we connect with others. Yesod in a negative sense is being manipulative of others. So this is the level where Hashem dispatches our neshama. So first of all, okay, it's like opening up a technical book and it tells you connect slot A into subset B. It works. I don't understand what it means. The designer understands. I take your word for it. So first of all, Chassidus comes along, and then one of the things that Chassidus does is it gives rational explanation, like we talked about, tangible application to concepts in Kabbalah. But in addition, here specifically, we're going to see how Chassidus brings a whole new understanding to this seemingly technical point about from whence the neshama is dispatched into the world. The quality of Malchus, as we talked about, is where the rubber meets the road. It's where God interfaces with the world. And that's why in the quality of Malchus, like a king has to reckon with his people, he can't rule over the people as if they're all kings, because they're not. They don't have his understanding. They don't have his life experience. So he has to acknowledge them. He has to deal with them in their level. So that's Hashem dealing with us. We are people. We have time, space, here, there, today, tomorrow. This is how Hashem has to engage with us. But at the same time, we don't need Hashem to be our buddy, like a parent and a child. On the one hand, the parent has to relate to the child like a child. On the other hand, it's supposed to be the parent. There's still that level of detachment, which is emphasized in this characteristic called Yesod, which is still part of the internal spirits. Because I don't want the king to just sit on the floor and play with me at my level. I want him to interact with me, but always retain that sense of being higher, like a parent and a child, even if your kids are grown. And therefore, in all of the characteristics that are more personal than Malchus, you cannot define them to something specific. They're not action items. And when they become revealed, very much to the parsha, when God reveals Gevura, Egyptians die. There's no rules anymore. And if an Egyptian is hiding in a Jew's house with blood painted on it, he still dies. But you said, right? Because I'm God. I don't play by rules. What happens when you have the two combined? You combine that intense godly level together with this applicable level. You have a revelation of a godliness that is outside of this world in this world. And this is what happens at Sinai. This is what we do all the time. We try to take something very personal, we try to share it with others. And that's what it means that Hashem returns us our neshama from this level. The return of the neshama every morning is a brand new creation. And the chiddush, this innovation, something from nothing, even though it comes through the malchus, it's very tangible, it's very practical. I can give you the biology of sleep to wakeness, because at the personal levels of godliness, the more private levels, there isn't this idea of wakeness, sleepiness. Nevertheless, this capacity to innovate something out of nothing comes ultimately from the essence of Hashem. Even though it's manifest in something very tangible and very creative, just like the king puts that stop sign. So all of our snickering about local government aside, we understand, why does the doctor do that? It doesn't seem to make any sense to me. We would talk, of course, about a Rebbe. Like, well, why does the Rebbe do that? I don't understand. Well, of course you don't understand, because you're not a Rebbe. But it looks like a very pragmatic behavior, but it's something far greater that's manifest in a pragmatic behavior. Maybe one day we'll get an insight into it, unlikely. Because we talk about non-existence, that is non-tangible, and tangible existence. But we're talking about an infinite level of godliness that can somehow be embedded within this physical world. And this is only when the Yechida is alive. First of all, we're alert to. First of all, you recognize the infinity of Hashem, and that's what can combine the higher than this world, the soul, with this world, the body. We do not believe in bifurcation, that the body, render unto Caesar. That's not a Torah concept. And the true awareness of this, that we should recognize, that is not only understand it conceptually, we should see it, that everything comes from Hashem, is only when we recognize that it comes from the infinity of Hashem. Just to share one quick thought, and then we'll stop for tonight. We have a rule that you're not allowed to benefit from this world without acknowledging Hashem. Classic thing, you can't eat unless you make a bracha. So I think it's the Gemara that says that if a person eats without making a bracha, so it's like stealing. If you go into the store and you take an apple and you don't pay for it, you're stealing. The apple belongs to the grocer and you didn't pay him. So the common understanding of that is that everything belongs to Hashem. So if I want to take it from Hashem, I make a bracha. Now I paid Hashem. But Chassidus says, well, hold the phone, Joan. Who says that that's the cost of the pear or of the food? Who said? So we say, no, this is a misunderstanding. This isn't a way in which we compensate Hashem for the fruit. When we make a bracha, we become one with Hashem. And now I'm not taking it away. So if I'm a guest, I say, excuse me, if I take something from the refrigerator, and it's up to the host. If it's my house, I don't ask permission. When I make a bracha, I'm aligning myself with Hashem. Why am I eating this food? Because I need to nourish myself. What do I need to nourish myself? To serve Hashem. I'm not taking it away from Hashem. I am become one with Hashem. When I think that it's me and Hashem, and he has something that I want. So what can I give him that I have that he wants? That's a mercantile relationship. Now we're saying it's not mercantile, it's that I become subsumed and connected with the infinity of Hashem. In Chicago, we have the mercantile exchange, so we know that. All right, good night, everybody. Tomorrow night is Parsha at 9